Welcome back to the channel where we explore, learn, and theorize about the Marvel Universe. Today we're going to be talking about Galaga Guy. If you're new to the channel, or even if you've been watching for a while, make sure you subscribe because more than 96% of you guys aren't subscribed. And if you think you're subbed, double check because apparently there's a glitch where people are getting unsubscribed from certain channels. And remember that a subscription is free for you, but it really helps the channel a lot. And you can always unsub later if you want. Now let's get started. We've all seen Marvel's The Avengers, and whether your fondest memory is when the Avengers are first meeting, and Thor smashes Captain America's shield foreshadowing their teamwork in the future, or when Thor is scolding Loki before being knocked away by Iron Man who makes fun of him for being a god and wearing a cape, none of it even comes close to being as important as this scene.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
One day while I was scrolling endlessly through YouTube, I was recommended this scene. And since then, I've been thinking about it tirelessly. Why was it included in the movie? What deeper meaning does it have to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, none really. According to the director of the film, Joss Whedon, that man was never supposed to be playing Galaga. It was actually added after the fact because the computer operator just looked shifty, and Joss wanted to know what he was up to, which made for a fitting punchline for Robert Downey Jr.'s improvised line. So they added that bit. It wasn't scripted, it was decided on the day. However, I refuse to believe that this is where the story ends. Who was this character really? How and why was he playing Galaga on the helicarrier? And how did he even get the job in the first place? Well, to start, we have to break down what SHIELD is. SHIELD, which stands for Strategic Homeland Intervention and Logistics Division, is an American extra-governmental military counterterrorism and intelligence agency tasked with maintaining both national and global security, which means that no random person will be allowed to work there. Karen isn't going to get Nick Fury's coffee. On that ship, it's going to be the best of the best, agents most likely handpicked by Nick Fury himself based on previous achievements, intelligence, ability, and military prowess. To help you better understand, SEAL Team 6, officially known as the United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and Delta Force, officially known as the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, are the most highly trained elite forces in the US military. Both are special missions units under the control of the secretive Joint Special Operations Command, and they perform various clandestine and highly classified missions around the world. Each unit can equally perform various types of operations, but their primary mission is counterterrorism. Delta Force is an army outfit that primarily selects candidates from within their own special forces and infantry units. However, they will also select candidates from all branches of service, including the National Guard and Coast Guard. SEAL Team 6, on the other hand, selects candidates exclusively from the Navy SEALs team community. If a candidate does not pass the grueling selection process though, they will still remain part of the elite SEAL teams. When interviewed by We Are the Mighty, SEAL Team 6 operator Craig Sawyer said, "It's a matter of can candidates quickly process what they're taught and keep up." Both units have the most sophisticated equipment and are highly trained in close quarters combat, hostage rescue, high-value target extraction, and other specialized operations. The difference is the extensive training SEAL Team 6 operators have in specialized maritime operations given their naval heritage. And according to a former Delta operator who asked to remain anonymous, each unit has strengths and weaknesses. Neither is better or worse. Generally speaking though, both units are equally capable of executing all specialized missions that the Joint Special Operations Command is tasked with. And according to SEAL Team 6 operator Craig Sawyer, these two groups are the most elite operators the military can provide. So because SHIELD is an American extra-governmental military counterterrorism and intelligence agency tasked with maintaining both national and global security, one could assume that at the bare minimum, every single SHIELD agent could join either SEAL Team 6 or the Delta Force. But why was Galaga Guy on the ship? Unfortunately, Galaga Guy doesn't get much screen time after being called out for playing video games on a multi-billion-dollar helicarrier, let alone by Tony Stark while the Avengers were there, with the threat of Loki looming over their heads mere moments before the brainwashed Hawkeye attacked the ship, stealing Loki's scepter which contained the Mind Stone. So we don't really get too much information on why he's there. However, if you remember, once the villains arrive, Hawkeye shoots an explosive arrow into the helicarrier's turbine engine, causing the ship to begin losing altitude. And Galaga Guy is the one who gives Maria Hill the damage report, saying that the explosion caused by Hawkeye disabled one of the rotors of the helicarrier, but it was still intact.
Number 3 engine is down.
We've been hit.
Can they get it running?
We've got a fire on engine 3.
Talk to me.
Turbine looks mostly intact, but it's impossible to get out there to make repairs while we're in the air.
We lose one more engine, we won't be.
And this leads to the scene between Iron Man and Captain America where they remove the debris from the turbine and get the ship level again. Anyways, from this scene you can see that Galaga Guy is in a pretty high position, either being Maria Hill's second-hand man, the person in charge of keeping the ship flying, or at the very least, keeping Rotor 3 working. But to better understand what this really means, and how important Galaga Guy would have been to SHIELD in the helicarrier if he was in charge of keeping Engine 3 working, let alone the entire ship, we first have to know what exactly a helicarrier is. And according to the Marvel Cinematic Universe wiki, helicarriers are advanced flying command centers that double as aircraft carriers. Specifically, helicarriers were designed to be capable of sustained independently powered flight via 4 massive turbine engines that provide the lift needed to keep them in the air, though they were able to retain seaborne capabilities. Their technology was created in part with designs by Howard Stark. S.H.I.E.L.D. relied on helicarriers as highly strategic mobile bases from which they could perform a number of effective reconnaissance, stealth deployment, or direct strike operations. Now, while we don't have anything even remotely close to a helicarrier in real life, if we take the information that Marvel has given us, along with real-world technology and aircraft carriers, we can understand more about Galaga Guy and how smart he really needed to be even if he was only working on Engine 3 and nothing else. Of course, while it would be impossible to build a helicarrier with the technology we have now, let alone the technology we had in 2012 when the Avengers took place, we can get rough estimates of its dimensions, cost, and even the power source it would need from real-world examples. As of making this video, the closest thing we have to a helicarrier is the Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier, which cost $12.98 billion to build, and an extra $4.7 billion in research and development alone. It weighs 100,000 tons and is 1,106 feet long. As for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier, the most detailed dimensions I could find were that it was between 1,100 and 1,400 feet long, weighed between 100,000 and 115,000 tons, and had a crew capacity of 1,700 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, which is almost identical to the most advanced aircraft carrier currently being used by the United States military. So basically, all we need to do is get ours to fly. But all jokes aside, the Avengers had the help of genius billionaire playboy philanthropist Tony Stark, who after the attack on the helicarrier, adapted the arc reactor his father invented, so that future helicarriers relied on repulsor technology rather than turbines, allowing them to stay in the air indefinitely. Currently, the Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier has 2 brand new upgraded AB-1 nuclear reactors, which are said to create 600 megawatts of electricity. However, that's nothing even when compared to the mini arc reactor Tony Stark had in his chest, which has an energy output of 8 gigajoules per second, or 8,000 megawatts of electricity, which by the way would melt him immediately. But that also helps you understand how ridiculous the technology needed to make a 100,000 ton helicarrier fly, let alone keep it in the air would be. Just to help you paint a mental picture, 600 megawatts of electricity could power 600,000 homes. To better understand how much a megawatt really is, we have to know the basic definition of energy terms. Watts are like the yardstick for measuring power, and a 100-watt light bulb, for example, is rated to consume 100 watts of power when turned on. If such a light bulb were on for 4 hours, it would consume a total of 400 watt-hours of energy. Watts therefore measure instantaneous power, while watt-hours measure the total amount of energy consumed over a period of time. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts, and a megawatt is 1 million watts. So 8,000 megawatts is equivalent to 8 billion watts being used almost instantaneously. Anyways, later versions like the redesigned industrial arc reactor used to power Stark Tower, which was completely removed from the city's power grid and ran entirely from the arc reactor in order to make Stark Tower a beacon of clean energy and show the world the capability of arc reactor technology on a large scale, which by the way was only a prototype, allowed the building to maintain itself for an entire year, proving how powerful this technology and power source truly was. So as you can imagine, the helicarriers that had arc reactors were using infinitely more power than Iron Man's tiny chest reactor, which once again was already more than 10 times as powerful than the technology we're currently using. On the other hand, Tony didn't start using the arc reactor until Iron Man 1, which as we know means that S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't using one to fly their ship either. Iron Man 1 started off with Stark selling weapons to the military, plus as we find out later in the movie, the helicarrier is full of Stark Industries tech, and S.H.I.E.L.D. had been actively working on using and reverse engineering World War II era Hydra technology with super scientists like Hank Pym and Howard Stark, which means that the helicarrier could have possibly been running on anything from nuclear power to prototype arc reactors created by Howard Stark, or even stolen Stark tech, which makes it impossible to guess how much energy it would really take to make a helicarrier fly. Either way, this means that Galaga Guy is a crucial member of the team, and possibly the 3rd highest level S.H.I.E.L.D. agent following director Nick Fury and Maria Hill. According to the Marvel database, however, he's only a technician, but I beg to differ. You see, the MCU has a Skrull problem, and soon, it's gonna get even worse. As many of you know, Skrulls are shape-shifting aliens who in the comics are actually villains, and bring upon the Secret Invasion, where they infiltrate major organizations and teams, making themselves look, act, and speak like the originals. However, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, these aliens are currently good, and they're our allies. But they've already begun to invade, to infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., and to take over. You see, if the rumors for Captain Marvel 2 are real, then the Kree-Skrull War, which is currently ongoing, will result in the death of many Skrulls, putting the blame on Carol Danvers for prioritizing the protection of the galaxy over the Skrulls themselves. And Talos, who is currently standing in for Nick Fury on Earth while he sets up the space station and new organization called S.W.O.R.D., will be captured, tortured, and return as a Super Skrull to enact his revenge on Captain Marvel. According to insider Mikey Sutton, The Marvel Cinematic Universe is like a galactic map that threads one world with another. Everything has a purpose. Each scene, every line, they'll all later paint the big picture. So it's no coincidence that the Skrulls appeared in Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Far From Home. According to Mikey Sutton's sources, all three are set to reappear in Captain Marvel 2. In September of 2019, Mikey scooped that Captain Marvel 2 would feature Veronica as the main villain in a loose adaptation of the Secret Invasion storyline. And he's recently learned that the plans for Captain Marvel 2 are evolving, with Secret Invasion remaining its core focus. After the roots of Secret Invasion are planted on Disney+, which I'll get into later, Captain Marvel will be battling more than one Skrull in her sequel. In fact, she'll be taking on a Super Skrull. However, it's been revealed to Mikey Sutton that it won't be the Super Skrull with the Fantastic Four's powers, but instead, with the abilities of Spider-Man, and thus Marvel Studios will pay homage to Marvel Team-Up number 62, where Carol Danvers, who was Miss Marvel at the time, collaborated with Peter Parker to fight the Super Skrull. MCU solo movies have gotten bigger with each successor, and Captain Marvel 2 fits into that mold by having Spider-Man guest star. Mikey Sutton also leaked that Marvel wanted Nova to debut in Captain Marvel 2 as well, and based off of what he's heard, this could either be a brief introduction, or if the Super Skrulls take in Spider-Man's powers, Nova could provide a much needed power boost. And as far as Rogue is concerned, there's still talk about her making her MCU debut in Captain Marvel 2 as well, but instead of her being the main villain in the movie, the Super Skrull will take her place, and she'll be set up via cameo as the villain for the third movie, with Miss Marvel appearing in Captain Marvel 2 as well. But as you all know, the Skrulls were introduced as being good, or our allies in the MCU, and that made a lot of people angry and confused, because in the comics they're clearly bad. But what I think is a great way to transition them over to villains and introduce a new superhero team at the same time is that after Thanos' snap, Captain Marvel travels the universe to help those devastated by what happened. During this time, she goes to Xandar, where she finds Richard Rider, the sole survivor of the planet, which not only makes him Nova, but gives him the entire power of the Nova Force. And while she's off helping others, it's the perfect opening for the Kree to spray the Earth with a Terrigen mist, creating the Inhumans and also resuming their war with the Skrulls. And due to Captain Marvel's absence, the only character who was really even aware of the Skrulls and had the power to save them, the Skrulls would get slaughtered and captured, leading to them hating Captain Marvel for not saving them. Now, I believe that Galaga guy is actually a Skrull, and the invasion was being set up all the way back since the Avengers in 2012, or possibly even before. You see, for Galaga guy to be on the helicarrier in the first place, he would need extensive knowledge on the ship, he would need to be incredibly smart and quick-witted, and have exemplary military achievements plus intense training and astounding combat skills. Unless you could do everything better than anyone else, there would be no reason for you to be on that ship, let alone be picked by Nick Fury and work as Maria Hill's second in command. Now, why do I keep saying that Galaga guy was Maria Hill's second in command? Well, she could have gone to anyone else working there, or shouted at them to update her on the ship's status. But she went straight to him first. Not to mention that Galaga guy is one of the only S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that gets dialogue, let alone more than one liner scene. Also, like I said, in the MCU, Talos and his wife Soren are basically stand-ins for Nick Fury and Maria Hill, which was revealed at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. The real question, though, is how long has this been going on, and who else is in on it? How many other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents or characters in general are already Skrulls? Captain Marvel 1 introduced the Skrulls to the MCU in 1995, and since then it's very possible that Talos and Soren have been replacing Fury and Hill for many of the events we saw unfold during the MCU's first 3 phases, including the attack on the helicarrier in 2012. Not to mention that a giant space station like SWORD wasn't built in a few days, or even in the 8 months since Tony Stark's sacrifice in Avengers Endgame, the return of all those dusted by the snap, and SWORD's reveal at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, which means that this project has realistically been ongoing for the better part of a decade if S.H.I.E.L.D. has believably and secretly been launching parts and materials into space to build and man the huge new base. Therefore, if Galaga guy is a Skrull, not only does Nick Fury have one more ally working in S.H.I.E.L.D., which by this point was already overrun by Hydra, but the Skrulls have one more ally as well if anything goes wrong, and the more Skrulls they can get to infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers, or any other teams coming in the future like the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, or even the Inhumans, the better and easier it'll be to take over. Not to mention that the Super Skrull, who like I said previously is rumored to debut in Captain Marvel 2, is one of the Fantastic Four's most recognizable villains. So that's in my opinion why Maria Hill went straight to Galaga guy when the first engine failed instead of anyone else. He was one of, if not the only person other than Nick Fury that she truly trusted. But none of this has really answered the question you want to know most, and I've been trying so hard to dodge. How and why was Galaga guy even playing Galaga on the helicarrier? A secret government agency tasked with protecting the world from any major threat surely wouldn't have normal computers that you can play video games on, right? Well, you see, this wasn't actually Galaga. I mean, it was, but it wasn't exactly being used for fun. In fact, the game was part of a much larger training regimen all S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were forced to go through in preparation for the upcoming war. You see, at this point in time, Nick Fury and Talos had already switched places multiple times, and the Skrulls knew much more about the universe than us puny humans did at the time, and still do. The Skrulls had seen evil races take over countless planets while committing genocide to dozens of other alien species, and Thanos was a name they knew all too well. The Mad Titan that was bent on reducing all life in the universe by half to prevent overpopulation and the lack of enough natural resources. At this point in time, Nick Fury and Talos had already switched places multiple times. You see, the end of the Avengers was our first glance at Thanos, but he'd already been terrorizing planets long before ours, wiping out half of crowded planets' inhabitants like Gamora's homeworld where the Zen Hubris once lived peacefully. But once Captain Marvel saved the remaining Skrulls, they realized that Earth was the only planet capable of standing up to Thanos, and they told Nick Fury what was coming. They told Fury about the Chitauri, which Thanos used to invade and conquer planets, their sister species the Outriders, first seen in the Wakanda fight in Infinity War, and most importantly about the Chitauri motherships that were designed after the blue battleships in Galaga, which is why Galaga Guy wasn't immediately fired, because as smart as Iron Man was, no one could have known that Galaga was actually a training simulation S.H.I.E.L.D. agents went through to take on the Chitauri. While it might have looked like Galaga Guy was messing around instead of doing his job, at this point in time the Skrulls had no qualms with humans. After all, we had saved them, and for that reason, they were training not only themselves, but unbeknownst to everyone else, they were training the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents through the best medium possible, Galaga, and preparing to fight alongside the best of us against the incoming threat. But the story doesn't end here either, as after the Avengers, Galaga Guy went on to live a relatively normal human life following the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. And you might be wondering, well, why didn't he go to work on the Sword base if he was such a high-ranking member in S.H.I.E.L.D.? And to that I would say that there are a couple of options. He may have fallen in love with an Earthling and decided to settle down. Or maybe, and the most likely outcome I can think of, is that he actually fell in love with Galaga and decided to leave the rest of the Skrulls, the Kree-Skrull War and Sword behind, and instead spend his time playing more of his favorite game. Unfortunately, this isn't a happy ending though, as 6 years after the Avengers, Galaga Guy was about to beat his high score when the blip happened. Thankfully, he did get revived 5 years later due to the Hulk snap, but that new record will probably never be his, and he'll now have to deal with not only leaving his friends, family, and those that depended on him the most behind for a video game, but that he did nothing in the battle against Thanos, plus the fact that he'll probably never beat his high score from 2012. Moving on past Galaga Guy's failure at playing the one game he's literally known for, we have to look at the future. And because he'll probably be too ashamed to show his face at his local arcade again, he'll realize that he wasted all this time playing Galaga instead of being with his own people or using his military training to help save, or at the very least, fight for the Earth. This would lead to him getting in contact with Nick Fury once again and asked to return to SWORD. Now SWORD was actually a subdivision of S.H.I.E.L.D., which stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department. But after S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated and overrun by Hydra under even Nick Fury's nose, and the world was attacked multiple times by aliens, SWORD took over as the new government agency that protects Earth and is now the counterterrorism and intelligence agency, which also deals with extraterrestrial threats to world security. So the next time an alien comes knocking at our door trying to commit genocide, whether it be the Celestials in the upcoming Eternals movie, Galactus, or the Beyonders, will supposedly be ready. Of course, by that point, we'll hopefully have cosmic-level characters in the MCU as well, like Adam Warlock, Nova, the Eternals, and the Silver Surfer to help lighten the load, alongside the incredibly powerful lineup of characters we already have, like the MCU's first mutant Scarlet Witch, the Sorcerer Supreme Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, Thor, and possibly even Star-Lord since he's part Celestial. But going back to why Galaga Guy and the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were using Galaga as a training tool. While you might think that this makes no sense or that it's stupid, this is not something that's uncommon in the military, especially during our current situation in 2020. According to the official US Army website, simulations and gaming are nothing new to training in the Army. Tank crews can train in multiple virtual environments, including using the Close Combat Tactical Trainer and Advanced Gunnery training systems. But with the current situation, leaders had to find inventive ways to train their soldiers. Over the last few weeks, troopers have been conducting various training events using an online game which simulates various military equipment, including tanks. The idea came about after limitations were placed on training opportunities in order to protect the force, said Troop Commander Captain Mike Manoogian. We have a lot of soldiers who enjoy video games on their free time, and talking with many of them we found that a lot play tank games, so we began exploring opportunities. The leaders got together and looked at the various options available, and after testing a few, determined which games met their needs and gave them the best chance to train and maintain readiness. We are able to use the game as a teaching tool for each crew member, said Staff Sergeant Tommy Hunt, a section leader in 3rd Platoon. For example, drivers can train on maneuver formations and change formation drills. Of course, online games have their limitations, but for young soldiers, it helps them to just understand the basics of their job. A typical session will start with a brief from the section leader or platoon leader, followed by rehearsals. It will also include required readings from training manuals. The crews then will meet up online and execute the training for that day. Following the training, they will conduct an after-action review to discuss lessons learned and ways to improve. "It's great, we get a lot of questions and feedback," said Hun. "I'm not sure if it is because of the distributed nature of it, or if it is because they are seeing things from a different perspective. But my soldiers are speaking up and sharing their thoughts and ideas. There are restrictions placed on the soldiers though. After all, this is a training event meant to develop skills. So they use a free gaming voice app, and leaders give voice commands just as if in a real simulator. They also have to use proper call for fire procedures before actually using artillery in the game. While a good substitute, the online experience doesn't replace the simulators that the Army uses, according to Sergeant David Ose, a section leader with 1st Platoon. But it does help our younger soldiers get an idea of the bigger picture," he said. "While things like Close Combat Tactical Trainer are good for learning your job in Switchology, this experience helps them see the why behind what we do. The game gives the perspective from the commander's hatch and from the gunner's seat." Ose said that, for instance, a young driver may not understand why he must move the tank forward and backward in the battle position rather than staying up, but being exposed to other viewpoints through the game is extremely helpful. It also helps their understanding of some of the tactical decision-making of their leaders, Manoogian said. And while Galaga isn't exactly the same as what's used in the military, Galaga could be the Earth's best tool, especially since SHIELD agents can't practice in real life against Chitauri motherships, but because the Chitauri motherships were designed after the blue battleships in Galaga, it's almost the perfect training simulation. Now, to better understand how Galaga could be used by the Skrulls to not only train themselves, but also SHIELD agents, we have to know what exactly Galaga is. Galaga is a fixed shooter arcade game developed and published by Namco in Japan, and published by Midway in North America in 1981, and it's the sequel to Galaxian, released in 1979. The gameplay of Galaga puts the player in control of a spaceship which is situated at the bottom of the screen. At the beginning of each stage the area is empty, but over time, enemy aliens will arrive in formation. And once all of the enemies arrive on screen, they will come down at the player's ship in formations of 1 or more and may either shoot it or collide with it. During the entire stage, the player may fire upon the enemies, and once all enemies are vanquished, the player will proceed to the next stage. The objective of Galaga is to score as many points as possible by destroying insect-like enemies. The player controls a starfighter that can move left and right along the bottom of the playfield. Enemies swarm in groups in a formation near the top of the screen, and then begin flying down toward the player, firing bullets at and attempting to crash into them. In later stages, some enemies even break from an entering group to frantically try to crash into the player. The game ends when the player's last fighter is lost, either by colliding with an enemy, one of its bullets, or being captured. Now, while it's almost impossible that the Chitauri saw Galaga, created their ships and their attack patterns based on those in the game, and follow the same set of rules, Galaga was at the time the Earth's best defense against the alien threat. And because Galaga Guy not only had to blend in with the humans, but had to train himself, impress Nick Fury aka Talos, and overall actually like the game, he would play the game whenever he wasn't working, which led to Tony Stark catching him playing the game at work on a multi-billion or possibly even trillion-dollar helicarrier. Moving on, Galaga Guy would return to SWORD to continue working for Talos, and this is where things get interesting. But for this next part, I'll first have to briefly explain what the Secret Invasion storyline is, and how it'll affect every character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and the Inhumans alike, all of which will hopefully have been introduced by then. In the comics, just like in the MCU, the Kree and the Skrulls are at war. However, in the comics, this war had almost impacted Earth, and the Illuminati, a team which consists of Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Professor X, Namor the Submariner, Black Bolt, and Doctor Strange, traveled to the Skrull homeworld to basically tell them that if they ever put the Earth in danger again, they would kill them all. Unfortunately for the Illuminati though, the Skrulls seemed to be much smarter than them, and had other plans for the heroes and Earth. Without anyone realizing, the Skrulls captured the Illuminati, experimented on, analyzed, and copied their DNA, then released them in what felt to these characters like no time had passed at all. Following this, the Skrull Queen Veranke prophesied that the Skrull Empire would be destroyed, and that they needed someplace else to live. However, she was arrested and cast out for heresy. That is, until Galactus destroyed the Skrull homeworld, proving her right, and garnering her a cult-like following, which she used to begin capturing heroes during the events of Civil War and the House of M storyline, replacing them with Skrulls, which along with their knowledge of superhero and human DNA thanks to the Illuminati, made it impossible for anyone to tell the difference. Spider-Woman was the first hero to be replaced after she was tricked by the Skrulls because they promised they could bring her powers back. The cool thing though is that the Skrulls didn't just replace her with any random Skrull. It was Queen Veranke herself who took her place. Then back on Earth, sometime after the Superhuman Registration Act, a battle broke out between the New Avengers and the Hand over the fate of Echo. During the fight, Echo was freed from the Hand's influence and stabbed the Hand's leader Elektra. Moments after her death, Elektra was revealed to be a Skrull. Tensions rose amongst the New Avengers as no one had been able to detect Elektra's true nature, so they surmised that any one of them could also be a Skrull. Spider-Woman, who was actually Veranke, suggested that they hand over the Skrull corpse to Iron Man, but she was rebuked by Luke Cage, who believed Iron Man to be a Skrull as well. During a fight, Spider-Woman knocked out Wolverine and stole the corpse to bring to Iron Man. Spider-Woman informed Tony Stark of what happened, including the suspicion by his former teammates that he was a Skrull himself. A disturbed Stark accepted this, claimed that his possession and DNA restructuring by Ultron verified his authenticity, then demanded to know where Nick Fury was, because he would know what to do. However, no one knew where Fury was at the time, because Nick Fury is always the first person to figure out what's going on, so he'll go into hiding, disappearing for a while, and when he reappears, he has a plan for defeating the villains or fixing whatever problem the world is facing, which is one of the reasons why he's building S.W.O.R.D. now and switched places with Talos in the first place. Unable to find Nick Fury, Iron Man inspected the Skrulls' corpse and was shocked to realize that it was a repercussion of the Illuminati's attack years prior. So he reassembled the group for the first time since they splintered shortly before Civil War, and they debated over whether this meant an invasion had already taken place. The group was caught off guard, however, when Black Bolt voiced his opinion. It was revealed that he was in fact a Skrull as well, and fought the others over the body. This Skrull showed to not only have Black Bolt's powers, but to have the combined powers of all the members of the Illuminati. After Namor managed to kill him though, the Illuminati were attacked by 2 more Skrulls. A Skrull that had Cyclops' optic blast, Nightcrawler's prehensile tail, and Colossus' metallic skin, and a Skrull that wielded a technological copy of Thor's hammer Mjolnir. But these Skrulls were easily killed by Iron Man, who detonated a small nuclear bomb with his armor. Namor then reminded them that any of them could also be a Skrull, and that no one was to be trusted, which led to the team disbanding once again. Going back to Spider-Woman though, it's revealed that Veronica went to Tony Stark first because she was trying to sow the seeds of distrust among the heroes and tried to convince Iron Man that he was actually a Skrull. However, Black Widow overheard Spider-Woman's conversation with Stark, and she actually figured out the easiest way to tell if someone was a Skrull or not: shoot them. By shooting them, they'll either bleed red like humans, or green if they're a Skrull. Now while this was going on, something really cool happened when a ship crash landed in the Savage Lands, and you realize just how long the Skrulls have been planning this attack. When the ship opens, you see the original versions of characters from when they were captured by the Skrulls. There's Jean Grey in her iconic green Phoenix Force costume, there's Luke Cage with an afro from when he was just starting out as a hero and went as Power Man, we see Hawkeye in his original purple suit, whereas now he's Ronin, and a bunch of other characters with costumes from different time periods, signifying when they were actually captured and replaced by Skrulls. The best part about this though, is that you still don't know if these are the real characters, if they're Skrulls, or if they're a mix of both original characters and Skrulls. As just like with the Illuminati, the Skrulls could have captured them, copied their DNA, and sent them back without the hero even realizing what happened. Or, they could have sent a Skrull back and kept the hero all this time, which is why Black Widow's tactic of shoot first, ask questions later, while incredibly impractical, was a surefire way of differentiating between the Skrulls or not, and was the best option they had at the time, because not even the smartest Marvel characters could figure out how to tell the difference. No DNA tests, none of Tony Stark, Hank Pym, or Reed Richards' tech, and none of Doctor Strange's powers could tell the difference because of the perfect replication of the hero's DNA. Skipping most of the rest of the story so as to not spoil the entire thing for you, we return to the fight against the Skrulls, where every team you could think of comes together to take them on. From what was left of the X-Men after House of M, to the New Avengers, the Young Avengers, the Secret Avengers made up of characters who refused to register their powers, and most importantly the Thunderbolts. Now the Thunderbolts were important for 2 reasons. 1, Black Widow and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier will seemingly set the team up in the MCU once they release, and 2, Norman Osborn is the one who kills the Skrull Queen Veronica. You see, as the heroes are about to end her, Osborn swoops down from a helicopter and kills her in front of all the cameras. So while the heroes had saved the Earth, Norman Osborn took all the credit. And this not only netted him the title of new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he turned into Hammer, but he also had former S.H.I.E.L.D. director Tony Stark, portrayed as being indirectly responsible for the Skrull invasion, had him hunted down as a fugitive, stole his armor, and created the Dark Avengers, which opened the door for the Dark Reign storyline. Now the Secret Invasion storyline is probably one of the most interesting Marvel stories ever, and at Disney's Investors Day it was announced that a Secret Invasion Disney Plus show is coming, so it's very likely that we'll at least be introduced to the concept of Secret Invasion in that show, as it'll focus a lot on Nick Fury, the Skrulls, and S.W.O.R.D. And the upcoming Ironheart show will also tie into Secret Invasion, and I wouldn't be surprised if Captain Marvel 2 does as well. But let's wrap this video up in a nice little Galaga guy bow. Let's say that I thought too much into this whole Galaga guy has been a Skrull all along theory. If we go back a little to where Galaga guy asks his former employer Nick Fury for a chance to work for S.W.O.R.D. this time, and at that point in time Nick Fury has once again been replaced by Talos because the real Fury is off doing something more important, or he's actually already been captured by the Skrulls and Talos has been pretending to be him this whole time unbeknownst to anyone other than Spider-Man, who will also probably be one of the first characters the Skrulls try to capture and replace, which could be why it's rumored that Captain Marvel and Spider-Man will team up to take on the Super Skrull, who in the MCU at least for his first appearance, is said to have Spider-Man's powers instead of the Fantastic Four's. So when Galaga guy speaks to the fake Nick Fury, he could be captured and replaced by a Skrull without anyone knowing. Which is why even if Galaga guy wasn't a Skrull this whole time, Secret Invasion is scary because of how hard it is to differentiate between humans and Skrulls. But thankfully, whether Galaga guy is a Skrull or not, it still allows this theory to make sense and keep the story going in the same direction. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Do you think that Galaga guy was a Skrull this whole time? And do you think that him playing Galaga was really because he just looks shifty? Or is there actually a deeper meaning behind it? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you'll never miss another video. Thanks for watching, and remember to wash your hands and stay safe.